I just want to preface this show. I just want to start a little bit by getting a little bit off my chest. I had a very bad day, which led to this pay-per-view, believe it or not. First off, Vinny, of course, didn't bother checking his phone or reading his messages, so showed up an hour early when I had errands to run. And then, of course, Sean showed up an hour early because it was Vince's responsibility to alert Sean as to when he should arrive. So that started off things to a great note. So anyway, we sat down and watched the old pay-per-view. And, of course, what happens for the fourth straight pay-per-view? 4, everybody. We could not order it because Comcast alerted me that we didn't have enough credits. At some point in the last month, Comcast began instituting credits or something of that nature. We've talked about this before. I don't know what these are. They've got a $150 spending limit on pay-per-views. You can only spend $150 on Comcast pay-per-view. It's like if I instituted a $5 spending cap on Figure 4 merchandise. You can't buy any more. The limit is $5. Anything above that, you need to personally contact me so that I can raise your spending limit for the website. Who the fuck puts a spending limit on how much you can spend on products? So $150 ain't enough. So the first time this happened, I said, listen, this is my job. Please increase this. Increase it to infinity. And the girl goes, no, we can increase it to $750. I said, great. I'm not going to buy $750 worth of pay-per-view. So then, of course, we went to watch the UFC pay-per-view, and Tony had the credit limit, which caused him to spend an hour on the phone handling the deal. And then the next day for Pride, same goddamn thing happened. So we missed the first 20 minutes of Pride, missed the first 20 minutes of both shows. So here it is, the fourth straight pay-per-view, tried to order, and they don't tell you when you attempt to order. You attempt to order, and everything is fine. They decide to alert you with 2 fucking minutes left before the show comes on the air. All of a sudden, it just comes up. You don't have enough credits to purchase this show. So I called this fucking Comcast, and what do they tell me? The person actually says, we have a record here that you called and asked for your credits to be increased to $750. They were increased to $750. And then the next day, somebody moved them back down to $200. I said, well, why the fuck did they do that? And they said, well, I don't know. Call billing tomorrow. So they increased it to $250 so that I could order this goddamn pay-per-view. And now tomorrow I've got to call again and ask permission to spend more money on Comcast.
This is bullshit.
So that filled me with rage. And then just, once that happens, just life in general just pisses you off.
Yeah.
Life in general just pisses you off. And I'm not going to... This is directed at everyone, not one person in particular. I know my buddy Craig, I think he wanted a hug at the end of the night, and he didn't get one from me, but I made you give him a hug. And Craig's going to listen to this and think that this is directed at him, but it's not. This is actually directed at Brent, who is going to return someday. But it applies to everybody, particularly on days when I've had a bad day. Brent comes over here, and by the way, his trial's Tuesday, which I will be attending. Brent comes over here and he's like, oh, it's social night. Let's all tell jokes and fuck around and do headstands and talk about pork and read the Torah and whatever the fuck else Brent wants to do. Let's watch a movie. He always brings a fucking stupid movie over here. Okay, I got a job that I have to do. And I don't want to come on here and complain about the job, except when Comcast doesn't let me order pay-per-views, but I've got to write a report. I've got to watch the pay-per-view. I've got to pay attention to the pay-per-view so that when I do a pay-per-view report, I don't have 8 million people on the board going, Brian, are you telling me you didn't hear Jim Ross make this one comment on a 2-hour and 45-minute episode of a pay-per-view? I've got to update the website. I've got to check the emails. I've got to check private messages on the board. I've got to do all this stuff. I'm not here during this 3 hours to fucking play wacky games and do whatever else. And if anybody, and I've told Brent this before, if you want to go out to a bar on a Friday night and we'll just all get drunk and laugh, great. But when it's that 3-hour window of pay-per-views, I've actually got to work. That goes for everybody. Everybody. Now, with that out of the way, now that I feel a little bit better, We're going to talk a little bit about this pay-per-view here, which thankfully was a decent pay-per-view. It was not a great pay-per-view. The first half of the pay-per-view, quite frankly, sucked. But we had a good tag team match that was newsworthy because of an injury to young Triple H. And we had a pretty good main event. And, yeah, other than that, I got no complaints. So we'll start off by letting Sean have a couple of words right here. Sean, what did you think of the show?
I enjoyed the big show. I think your mood would be vastly different if the first match of the show was Chris Masters and Carlito. We would have missed that. But other than that, I think it was a good show. I had a good time. It's good hanging out with friends.
Sure, it is. Yeah. Did you say dorks?
No. Even after your big speech about us talking, but I like hanging out with you guys.
It's nothing. I have nothing. It's nothing. You guys can talk. You understand? Everyone talk to each other.
Just not to you.
No. I mean, if it's just yes, just everyone feel free to talk to each other and bring food and cook food and do whatever the fuck you want. Just let me do my work. That's it.
10-4, got it.
Other than that, though, yeah, it was great. And in the case of Chris Masters and Carlito, you guys can just do whatever you want because I ain't paying attention. I saw enough of that match. There was not a whole lot of typing to do. There was nothing to do in that piece of shit match.
I believe 5 seconds after the bell started, you got up and left.
I left. I left the room. That was completely useless. So, yes, let's talk about the pay-per-view here. Of course, we missed the first 20 minutes of the cage match thanks to the fine folks at Comcast who made it a task for me to get this pay-per-view. This became work. This wasn't just push a button and you can spend your money. This was work. That's a hell of a business plan right there. So we went back and watched it later. It was Jeff Hardy Nitro cage match. It was good. It started out similar to a cage match you'd see at the top of the first hour on Raw. And by the end was a Raw main event cage match. So I guess that's fine. Did a lot of stuff off the top rope. Nothing really off the top of the cage. The closest thing to a top of the cage spot was a sunset flip power bomb by Nitro, but really Jeff was standing on the top rope, so wasn't quite that bad. But did a lot of stuff. Finish came when I guess she was going to slam the cage door on Jeff Hardy's head, something we've never seen in this business. And the ref went to stop her. He'd finally figured out what was going to happen. And as he's dragging her away, Nitro was standing on the top of the fence. Jeff kicked the fence open, the door swung open, Nitro crotched it, and Jeff climbed out for the pin, which was a creative finish. It was good stuff, so I guess maybe a 3.25 star match, somewhere around there. Nothing spectacular, but it was fine.
It was, as you noted, the theme for the evening was stuff that was fine to watch, but this is basically an above average Raw that lasted 3 hours. The most notable spots,
which we actually just saw about a month ago, free.
Exactly, yes. The notable spots here, Johnny Nitro, we've noted how much he's improving, and even though we've seen 8 million cage matches, he's still trying to find new stuff to do. Like when he got his legs caught at the top of the cage, was hanging upside down to get beaten.
Yep.
Just new things. So he's trying hard, so that's good. But other than that, watched it, thought it was okay. It's over. Don't ever need to see it again.
Yeah. John?
I don't think the ending was very creative. We've seen guys get crotched in the door all the time. Kurt Angle's done it. We've seen other guys do it. X-Pac, I guess. Nitro up the top of the cage when he was in the Tree of Woe, there was nothing that happened to it. He was in it, and
he was just in it.
And then Hardy didn't do anything to him, and he got down.
Yeah, so, he did a sit-up and then got out.
Yeah, there wasn't anything impressive as far as the cage was in this. There was no one being thrown into the cage. It really wasn't even a cage match.
Well, they did a couple of cage spots, but I don't want to complain about guys not doing stuff off the top. I will say that. I was petrified that Nitro was going to do some stupid twisting moonsault off the cage and blow out both knees, but that was actually to occur later on a spine buster. We shall get to that in a moment. So then we had Tag Team Turmoil, which Lillian described as a special bonus match. It was a tag team gauntlet match with the winners getting a future title shot. So, started out with Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas versus the Highlanders. This whole thing here, there were, 4 matches, and it was exactly like Impact. We had 4 2 to 3 minute matches. I remember nothing about them. They meant nothing. And in the end, we had challengers for some belts that will be wrestling in a match I can't even fathom. But we'll get into that in a moment. So, Shelton and Charlie Haas versus Highlanders. The world's greatest tag team was victorious. A superplex finish. A superplex. That was the finish of this match. Then we had Shelton and Haas versus Jim Duggan and Super Crazy, to which Jerry
actual tag team.
Yeah, Jerry Lawler screamed, "This is a team?" And then there was a pause as Vince McMahon yelled at him in the headset, and he responded with, "I like this team." Yes, this was before they'd even got into the ring. He decided he liked this team. So they hit the big clothesline. Charlie Haas did a little lucha with Super Crazy, and then Shelton clonked him, and Charlie pinned him with the German suplex. So they advanced again.
We did not get to hear Super Crazy chant USA, so I was disappointed.
Yeah, very sad. Or Hacksaw Jim Duggan chant Mexico.
That also would have been great.
Shelton and Charlie then faced Cade Murdoch and Ross. As soon as Cade Murdoch came out, Ross screamed, "How many teams are in this thing?" Like 50 teams had come out. This was number 3. So they had a match, and it was a little bit longer. Broke down into a 4-way. Haas put Murdoch in the Haas of Pain. But then Cade hit him with something off the top, got the pin. That was the end of that. Then we had Cade and Murdoch versus Crime Time. And Ross assumed these were the last 2 teams in the gauntlet. Which every Ross comment that he made about tag teams was like, this is really saying something about your brand. But anyway, they had a match, and they got the longest of anybody, obviously, since it was the main event of this gauntlet. And they kept Shad out of the ring till the comeback, which was not as good as his usual comeback, which isn't that good. But anyway, they got a decent amount of time, like I said. Good guys hit their neck breaker, got the pin. Match was fine. Mm-hmm. So with Crime Time winning, it seemed that DX was not going to win, that it was going to be Edge and Orton versus Crime Time, which
woo,
I cannot even fathom that match. They ain't putting that on pay-per-view.
No.
This will be a free match on Raw.
Perhaps tomorrow.
But that was a big deal right there. That's
yes.
Your cue, Vince.
The good news is Crime Time's over. People love them. As soon as the music hits, they all get excited. And that's pretty much the extent of the good news. Other than that, your Impact comparison was perfectly valid. It was a bunch of short matches that meant nothing. Sean, do you remember anything? You okay?
To show how unprepared these guys were, Ross and Lawler had no idea how many teams were in this thing. They were just throwing in teams like Duggan and Super Crazy.
Oh, it was a special surprise.
Oh, yeah, they made this thing up as they went along, and I'm sure Lawler and Ross didn't even know this match was happening until Lillian said it did.
There you go. It was very exciting. Then we had Vince meeting with Coach backstage regarding the Donald Trump-Rosie O'Donnell feud. Apparently this is a somewhat big deal. I've actually seen headlines about Donald Trump and Rosie O'Donnell, and I didn't bother reading the articles. I'm like, who could care about this? Who in the earth could care about this feud?
Have you seen the video of Trump making fun of Rosie?
I have not.
Oh, it's like on Entertainment Tonight stuff. She'd be like, he'll say stuff like, she's fat, she's a degenerate, she doesn't know what she's doing. She had a business go out of bankruptcy and all this other stuff. And
that's the big feud.
No, it started with, if you want to hear this.
I do want to hear it because it's actually an angle, but go ahead.
Have you heard about Trump and the Miss USA, the Miss Nevada that went
Sure.
out and got drunk and,
I've
took
seen
her
the
clothes
photographs,
off?
so I've heard.
Well, she was going to get booted off Miss USA, and since Trump owns Miss USA, he thought that she deserved a second chance. So he gave her a second chance.
I do too.
And Rosie,
I'm with Trump.
And Rosie thought, that was a horrible idea. What kind of thing are you doing? And said some bad things about Trump. And Trump fought back. And now it's all Trump making fun of Rosie and Rosie saying, that's pretty much it.
Well, anyway, the whole thing is a wacky publicity stunt, and they are going to have some sort of WWE tie-in leading up to the Royal Rumble, partially because the Apprentice ratings are not doing well. And so...
Well, The Apprentice started yesterday.
Well, this is the last season.
Actually, it starts tonight.
Things were dipping. So what they're doing, at least they announced this for tomorrow. I don't actually know if this match is going to take place tomorrow, but Vince said tomorrow we should have Donald Trump versus Rosie O'Donnell in the ring.
His exact words were, we should settle this the way all disputes should be settled. Physical abuse.
Yes. Now, I'm fairly certain Donald Trump's going to be there tomorrow.
I would totally believe that.
Rosie O'Donnell, I'm not so sure. The chances of them in a wrestling battle, I think, are slim. But they may do some sort of angle where they each represent some wacky pro wrestler, perhaps Chris Masters and Carlito, two guys that need a rub. I'm sorry, this is not TNA. They'll choose some main eventers, actually, to get this rub. But anyway, the point is there's something is going to happen with Donald Trump and Rosie O'Donnell.
I say they bring Trump in, and then they bring in Rosie. And then Trump
the big fat guy?
Oh, yeah, Trump versus Rosie.
Well, how about Rosie representing Rosie?
That's not happening.
And Donald Trump could represent who's rich? Who's got a bad hairdo in WWE?
The $1 Million Man.
Bring back Ted DiBiase.
JBL?
JBL, I don't know. So anyway, that's the story, kids. We're going to do something there, and I don't know what it is, but we'll probably have something in the news update tomorrow.
I predict midgets.
You will not be seeing some midgets. Then we had Ric Flair and Kenny Dykstra in a match straight out of 1985, except Flair looked like it was 2025. Flair's looked old for a while. Over a decade now, actually. But I think it's the thinning hair that makes him look significantly older. He's looking real old. He's looking like about 70, 75 years old. He tried. It was a fine Flair night. It wasn't Ric Flair at his best. It wasn't Ric Flair at his worst. They had a very basic match. The crowd started to get into it at the finish. They did a bunch of chop, punch exchanges, that sort of thing. And Flair finally put on the figure four, and Kenny got the ropes. Flair was punching and chopping him, and then Kenny hit a low blow and pinned him with a small package, and that was that. Probably 2 3/4 stars, which is fine. They're doing something with Kenny. I don't know if the wins over Ric Flair are really meaning a goddamn thing, but they're trying something with him. So I would have sort of done it differently, where I would have had Flair beat him a few times, and then the youngster finally finds the way to beat Ric Flair. When you just beat Ric Flair every time out of the gate, it's not really meaning a whole hell of a lot.
And then each progressive win means less and less and less.
Yeah.
You mentioned that this was not the best of Ric Flair. This may be sacrilegious to say, but it may be the best of Ric Flair in 2007.
No, it's not.
All right.
Well, 2007 is his first big match. But in 2006, he had nights where he looked great. This time did not catch up with him over the course of 2 months with no injuries.
I just wanted to break that subject.
No.
Someday it will happen.
Someday it will happen, yeah. But I thought it happened a couple of years ago, but then all of a sudden he had a big resurgence.
He had a resurgence.
So
there was a great moment here where after Ric Flair threw 800 chops and an occasional punch and elbow, Lawler said, "I can't believe how diverse Flair's offense is. He's chops and elbows and punches."
Yeah.
And I think he was serious.
Sure,
It was great. But other than that, yes, yay Ric Flair, yay Kenny Dykstra.
That's right.
I think that Kenny Dykstra's beginning is started like Randy Orton when he's going out and beating the pros, the veterans.
Sure.
But rather than like beating them once and moving on to the next guy, he continues to beat Ric Flair, and each time he beats him, it doesn't mean as much as it did the first time.
Well, Flair hasn't been protected, so it's not going to mean much when you beat him. But you can always rehab Ric Flair. And if Ric Flair would have beaten Kenny Dykstra clean with a figure four on a Raw main event, that would have done something for Ric Flair, and that would have meant something when Kenny Dykstra beat the guy. But instead, it's just like, we'll keep beating Flair in 2-minute matches on the mid-card and think it actually means something. But there's hope for Kenny. I will say that. He is 20. He is 37 years younger than Ric Flair.
Even when Kenny comes out in Ric Flair's robe and does the strut and then beats him, it's just like, all right, Ric Flair's dead. He's done for.
Yeah, you don't really. Well, I think that's it. You don't watch that match and think, boy, Kenny sure got a big win.
Yeah.
You think, boy, Flair's old, and they don't give a shit about him. So anyway, but I liked the match. It was fun, so I got no complaints. So Nitro was icing his testicles backstage, and he told Melina to call Joey Mercury. Tell him the Hardys were going to pay. So apparently Vince has changed his mind for the 23rd time in the past 4 weeks. They're all going to be together again, probably at WrestleMania. And Melina went to make the call, and she ran into Victoria with her clipboard, and Victoria wanted to talk, and Melina was like, "No, I'm in a hurry." Why?
Well, she had to call Joey before he went to bed.
What, before he can't return to the ring for another month and a half? She was just desperate to get going, but Victoria cut her off and basically gave this speech saying perhaps they should team up and be pals. And she said, "If you help me win the championship, I'll give you the first match for the belt." So that was that. And that was the collusion by the Devilish Women. Victoria and Mickie James, they had a 2-star match, which is About
4 3/4 on the women's scale.
2 stars higher than anything we've seen in about 3 months. But, nothing spectacular. Mickey was hot. Victoria looks fine. Did some moves. This, that, and the other thing. And
Hell of a recap here.
yeah, there's just nothing to it.
Yeah.
What happened? It was all an angle at the end. They had Melina come down, and Mickey kicked her. And so they were in the ring, and Victoria went for the Widow's Peak, and all the girls that Victoria had beaten up ran down to attack Melina, and this distracted Victoria. And so Mickey rolled her up, and the ref counted 1, 2, and then Victoria kicked out. And I thought, why? So then they immediately went to another spot where Mickey hit her with a DDT and got the pin, and I actually figured it out at that point. The point was, the finish of the match, after it was over, Lillian got in the ring, she gave the belt to Mickey, and all the girls that Victoria had beaten up danced around Victoria's body, and I thought Victoria's body would not be laid out after a cradle. That's why.
Well, there is that.
So anyway, this was, like I said, it was an average match, which is high praise for the women.
And fun or decent to sit through.
Average on the scale of your typical pro wrestling match. On the scale
on
of women's
television in
matches,
2007.
these days this was 5 stars.
Yeah. And again, it's the kind of thing that's fine to sit through and you don't mind sitting through it, but at the end of the day, we paid to watch it. That's not terribly cool.
No. Was that a Carlito?
Not intentional. I may be taking in Carlito by osmosis, which is
That's
a terrifying thought.
what we need is you becoming Carlito by osmosis.
Mickey's got big boobs, and I enjoyed them moving around the ring. And other than that, it was all right.
That's right. Yep.
He's probably the most accurate review of the three of us.
Yep. Actually, I'm going to read what I wrote here, which sounds remarkably like what Sean said. Mickey was looking amazing this evening, as in her boobs and ass looked awesome in her outfit. I hate to sound like such a pig, but I didn't want people confused and thinking that I was referring to her in-ring because it was horrible. I actually went on to explain why it was horrible, such as this bump she took off a tackle.
That was awful.
In which she did not leave her feet.
Yeah, she did not bump. She crumbled.
When I train with Paul in Buddy's backyard, sometimes he'll hit me with a tackle and I'll take that bump Mickey took. But when all the amateur wrestlers come in to train and they're all good athletes, I actually take bumps there in the shed in Everett.
You're not performing on pay-per-view.
These fucking girls were on pay-per-view, and if you would have only seen this bump, it was so bad. Oh, this show was not looking good up to this point. Now we had Edge and Orton versus DX for the tag team titles. Started out with this big brawl all over the place. I guess we'll just cut to the chase here. They worked over Sean Forever, who was bleeding like a mother. And for the one of you on the board who is an obvious troll and enjoys telling every people how much Shawn Michaels sucks, first off, you need to watch this match. Shawn Michaels, after this match was over, not just his selling while they were getting the heat on him, but when he saved the match at the end.
Yep.
This man deserves to be in every Hall of Fame there is, including the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Bowling.
Culinary Hall of Fame, any Hall of Fame there's
Rock and
ever
roll.
been on this earth, just put Shawn Michaels in it. He was so awesome, selling as a babyface in peril. And then Hunter got the hot tag. People were going ape shit. Hunter hits a big sidewalk slam or spine buster and blows out his leg. His right leg gone. They don't know what it is at this point. The update is it may be a torn quad, which would be bad. The last quad that he tore was his left quad. This was his right quad, so now each quad has been torn. I believe he may have suffered a partial tear of the right quad at some point. I'm thinking that this was a partial tear because when he tore the left one, and coincidentally he returned after that torn quad exactly 5 years ago to the day. That's scary.
5 years ago right now.
Yeah. So he when he blew that first quad out, he went down, and he couldn't do a thing. He could not do a thing. And they dragged his body up the ramp and took him away. In this match, he went down. He was hurting real bad. But after about 5 minutes, he was on his feet. And he was delivering chair shots, and he was walking around very gingerly. He did a pedigree on the announcer's table. He was still doing stuff. He was clearly fucked up. but I'm thinking this may have just been a partial tear, which would be significantly better than getting a full quad tear. But when he tore it, this match went from being a 4-star match to a no-star match immediately. Nobody could do a goddamn thing. Nobody knew what was going on. Everybody was talking to each other, and I mean, everybody knew there was something wrong. The announcers mentioned it, the fans went quiet, all the wrestlers were talking to each other, and it was just like, end this.
There were 4 bodies in the ring, that being Edge, Orton, the ref, and Hunter. Shawn was outside selling whatever happened to him before, and and no one had a clue what to do.
There are times when you suffer an injury, and you can try and gut it out and finish the match, and it'll work. This was not one of those times. It was so obvious that he was hurt. It was so obvious that the match was basically over. I mean, to everybody in the whole building, you should have just had somebody pin the guy. That's the easiest way to do it.
Really, yeah.
Instead, they went back and forth, and the best spot, the highlight of the year so far, was Hunter hit a horrible pedigree on one leg to Edge, and Orton rushes in with a chair. And he's rushing at Hunter, and he gets about a foot away, and then he just stops. And he turns around like he changed his mind, and he walks away.
Carrying the chair with him.
Carrying the chair. And it's like, I don't know what happened here, but that's fake. That is fake right there. And, of course, Edge still kicked out. And
it just got more painful and more embarrassing, and everyone just started to cringe at what they were watching.
I mean, this was seriously, for 2 minutes, the worst I've ever seen in a wrestling ring. And then Shawn Michaels decided, fuck this, I'm going to save this match. He did an El Santo dive through the middle rope and wiped out Orton, which I don't think I've ever seen Shawn Michaels do. He rushed into the ring and punched the ref right in the face for the DQ just to end the whole goddamn
that was the
thing.
first thing he did, actually. He came charging out of nowhere and just socked the ref.
No, he did the dive first.
Are you sure?
I wrote all this
All right,
down.
you wrote it down.
Did the dive, hit the ring, punched the ref, then he went out and grabbed a chair, and just they started beating the hell out of the heels. They beat them and beat them and beat them. Orton gigged again. They continued to beat them. They took them out to the announcer's table, and we ended up with Hunter giving Edge a pedigree on one table and then pointing at Shawn, who was in the ring on the top rope. And Shawn had this look like, I don't want to do this, but this match went all to hell, and we got to give the people something, so Christ help me. And he did this flying, gigantic elbow off the post through the table, killed Randy Orton, and the post-match went from being no stars to 4 stars all over again. So I guess when you average the whole thing out, this was probably a 3.5-star match. But by God, had Hunter not gotten hurt, this was looking to be one of the great matches of the year. Mm-hmm. And it's only 2 weeks in, but goddamn, this was great.
It was, in fact, great. And Hunter is such a trooper because the quad tear, when he tore the quad the first time, he even then he was still taking the Boston Crab on top of the table. And then in this match, he hits a spine buster. He grabs his knee. He says, I hurt my knee. Edge comes in. God damn it, the next spot's a spine buster. So Hunter hits him with a shitty spine buster, but still. He was trying his best. And
Hunter, let me say something here. Hunter's a trooper, but the match should have just ended. And I'm going to tell you why.
Well, you did.
If your mom dies the day of a pay-per-view, and you go out there and you still do the match, you're a trooper. You didn't have to go out there, but you're still capable of going out there, and you're doing something you don't really have to do. I'm sure WWE would give you the benefit of the doubt. Or this did take place in Kemper Arena when Owen Hart died. Everybody else came out and they did their match. Nobody wanted to.
Right.
Everybody was numb, but they were capable of going out there and executing a match. I saw a Shawn Michaels match a few years ago where he blew out his knee, and Shawn, who is 10 times the worker of Triple H, God bless Triple H, they turned this into a match.
It was great.
And Shawn worked
on one leg.
On one leg that he only had. He only had one leg.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't even working. He didn't have a leg, but they made that into the match.
And it was a main event match. It was great.
And it worked. It wasn't the best match, obviously. It would have been better if he wasn't really hurt, but he made it work. This match fell so completely apart that being a trooper, you shouldn't have been a trooper. If you want to be a trooper, lay down for 3 seconds.
Take a bullet.
That's when you're being a trooper. What would it have mattered? It was a DQ anyway. The champion's retained. Mm-hmm. Is it going to hurt Hunter because he got pinned after he tore his fucking quad again? That match should have just ended. And then they could have done all the post-match and everything like that. But It was a disaster for those 2 minutes of Hunter just trying to be strong and trying to keep going, even though everybody knew.
One of my favorite things about wrestling is watching it and when it goes awry and things aren't going as planned.
That would be this, yes.
And because I like knowing like the inside of the business, like when they're calling spots and how everything works together, and when things just totally go bananas, that you find out who the real people are in this business, and
who can work.
That Shawn Michaels, even after that humongous debacle happened and everything was just turning into crap, who turns it on? It's Shawn Michaels, who is the greatest wrestler of all time.
He is. Who was that other match that he saved?
It was when Nash. There was some wacky NWO 6-man. He wasn't even wrestling yet. He was just in the NWO's corner. And Nash, I think he tore his quad too. But
That's
whatever
right,
happened,
he was walking.
he collapsed and everyone froze.
Except Shawn Michaels.
And Shawn suddenly started running around the ring, telling all 6 men and the ref what to do. Ran in, kicked Booker T, ran out. I think
Oh,
it was
yes.
Booker T, whatever. But
It was Nash tore his quad walking, and Shawn. That's exactly what happened. And Shawn saved the day.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just amazing.
And that's what it was like here. This was not. I have to. I don't know how to put it, but he decided I'm going to single-handedly save the show no matter what the cost.
Yeah, and that's
I'm
exactly
going to punch
what
the
he
ref.
did.
I'm going to do a dive. I'm going to fucking kill Randy Orton with several chair shots, and I'm
Yep.
going to throw my body through this goddamn table.
Yes,
That dive he did to the outside was one of the scariest moments of this entire show.
it was.
Because Orton barely caught him, and if he didn't touch him, he would have landed right on his head.
And that is, God-fearing man or not, or woman listening to this right now, pray a little bit, because God picked up Shawn Michaels and he put him on that table perfectly. I looked at that and I thought, there's no way someone's not going to die in this moment right here. And he landed so perfectly. It was a miracle.
Orton's head ran into the chair. I think he may have died.
Fuck Orton. Who cares?
All right.
It's fine. He hit a padded chair. Jesus. The other dude went off the fucking post.
Well, through Orton.
You should have seen Shawn trying to run. The guy can't even run.
There's
He
that.
hobbles. And, still saved this show. So then it went off a cliff.
Sadly, there's no one to save the next segment.
Chris Masters and Carlito. I will start off with the positives. Carlito took a high backdrop. He did a cool double springboard moonsault.
I thought Tori was pretty hot tonight.
All right, if you want to say Tori was hot. She's hot for a wax doll. But yeah, that was the extent of the goodness in this match. This fucking sucked. Nobody cared. Nobody gave a shit for anything in the whole match. Masters did like a half Nelson German suplex, and Carlito
Still no one
flipped all
cared.
the way over, and no one cared.
Yes,
Carlito-
Chris Masters busted out the half Nelson German.
Carlito made a boring comeback. Masters sat down on a sunset flip, grabbed his tights, pinned him. No one cared. Then Masters put the master lock on him. No one cared. So Masters left the ring and he was walking up the ramp, and then he stopped and he looked back and he decided, I'm going to return. And he returned, and Tori slid out of the ring, and then he went back up the ramp.
I don't know. Don't look at me.
Somebody must have popped in a tape of Raw and realized Carlito sucks.
He does suck.
It's like one of those things where, I mean, when you're running around running a show, there's a lot of stuff to do. Maybe you don't have a chance to actually watch it.
Sure.
I'm sure Carlito, I mean, with that hair, he probably looks huge going through airports. But actually having to watch that fucking guy work, he is so bad.
There was a bit tonight where he
I'm
was
thinking that somebody finally figured it out.
he was allegedly running from corner to corner. I think if you watch it, he was actually skipping.
He may have been.
It was really bad.
Oh, those guys suck. Sean's laughing here like an idiot.
Watching Carlito run the ropes is one of the funniest things you'll ever see.
Funnier or less funny than watching Vince run through a sprinkler?
Well, he does it daintily. Carlito, he
He's a dainty fat man.
It's like a Fantasia where the hippos are doing ballet. That's me.
Basically, except they're way more coordinated.
no Carlito would. Vince is right. He would skip towards the corner. He
Sure,
would run
skip to the loo.
and take like 3 tiny steps and then
Yeah.
turn around, and
Sure, horrible.
it sucked.
It's just horrible. Oh my gosh. When the very basics of wrestling you're unable to do. When you can't run the ropes, when you can't take a corner, when you can't lock up, I don't care how many flips you can do. You suck.
Yeah, I'm trying. Chris Chetty could do flips in ECW. No one cared about him either.
No.
No. This was the death match.
Carlito is the new Chris Chetty. He really
Fine.
is.
Great.
I can think of no better comparison.
This was the death match slot on the show, and I can think of no two finer men to go in the death match.
No.
I like how they usually put in that position the women's match.
Sure.
And they felt that this was weaker than the women's match.
Oh,
and
yes.
they needed to make people forget about the DX, put these guys in.
This was the match to take the crowd down between the DX match and the main event.
Success. It worked.
It was a success.
Merchandise is up.
God, that was bad. Then we had Cena and Umaga for the WWE title. My DVR said there were 45 minutes of TV time left, but it was due to the screw-up by Comcast. There was only 20 minutes left, which made me feel a lot better. But you know what? I would have been fine with 45 minutes, because the 25 they did was totally fine.
Yeah.
Umaga is a giant, angry Samoan that beats everybody, usually in squash matches. So we really haven't had a chance to see him work a 25-minute match.
Ever.
He can work.
He was fine.
This fucking guy can work. And Cena held his own. They did a very old-school match. Umaga cut him off in like the first 3 minutes of this 25-minute match and worked on him the rest of the time. Cena's hope spots were all great. I mean, this wasn't a 4-star match or anything like that. Probably 3.5, maybe a little more, maybe not. But I mean, it was good. It was a really good match. The title was on the line. You had a challenger that was undefeated. You had the champion. Everything was good. And at the end of the match, you had Umaga going for the ass spot in the corner, and Cena kicked him in the face, and then schoolboyed him for the clean pin. Umaga, of course, hopped right back up. So he beat the monster, but he didn't beat him decisively.
He escaped the monster.
We didn't get a fuck finish.
The monster was not vanquished. No.
The monster was not slain. The monster was outsmarted for 3 seconds. Because really, he's a savage.
He was out-wrestled.
Who gives a fuck if his shoulders are down for 3 seconds? He wants to eat you.
Exactly.
This man was not defeated. So there's more to come here. This feud can continue.
And we're cool with that.
Umaga was not hurt by this loss. It helped Cena. He beat the monster. And boy, was Cena ever... This was a good night for Cena. He took a dumb bump over the top early, which I don't recommend he ever do again. He flew over the top. Didn't even touch the ropes, landed on his ass and back on the hardwood or the
black mats.
Pretty black mats. And then he was selling it like Umaga was 9,000 pounds.
Yeah.
He has lifted the big show. He's lifted some huge fat
Viscera.
men. Umaga's really only about 80 pounds heavier than Cena. He was acting like in 100 years he could never get this man up.
Yeah.
Which he can, obviously, with great ease, but it was such that one of Craig's friends, who Buddy Wayne refers to as the generic white friend number 4, he marked out after the 3rd attempt. He was like, just give up.
It worked, yes.
Yes.
The best one was the very first one where he didn't even hork him up on his shoulders. He slowly got him up and like squat pressed him up on his shoulders and then teetered over and fell onto his face.
Yeah.
With Umaga on it.
This was like the second time. He fell and the big fat guy ended up on his head and crushed him. And it was all great. This was a thumbs up. And really capped off the show on a good note. I cannot give this show a thumbs down because of this match and the DX match. Probably a thumbs in the middle, pointing a little bit up.
I can think of no better definition of a thumbs in the middle show.
I cannot give it a thumbs up, but
I can't recommend people go out of their way to spend their money and buy the replay.
Nah, you'll see Umaga and Cena for free soon enough.
But if you watch the show, you didn't hate it.
No,
and that's a thumbs in the middle show.
Well, I can't say that because Nut Bunnies in particular was irate at the finish of the main event. Let me read Nut Bunny's email here that he sent. What the fuck was that? How can they fucking book a feud that good?